So we did a family firewood video the other day, and my wife asked me the following question.
How many cords of wood do you think you've stacked and unstacked and restacked in your life?
So I really got to thinking what she had said and thinking about it, and it was a great question, and it's actually the inspiration for today's video topic, and that's going to be, is it worth stacking your firewood? I think it's very debatable. I think you could get different answers depending on who you ask, and I'm going to give my opinion and thoughts right now. So going back to when I was a kid, I stacked a lot of firewood over the years. Me and my brother stacked anywhere from 7 to 10 full cords a year. My father burned a lot of wood in his indoor wood boiler, which he still has to this day. And I've never not stacked firewood. There's been years that I stacked wood for other people in addition to myself. And the other thing to consider is a lot of the wood you're stacking, you may stack the same piece of wood 3, 4, even 5 times. So if you burn, let's say, 6 or 8 full cords of wood, you could be stacking 25 or 30 cords because you're stacking some of the pieces, like I said, 3 or 4 times. So it's really hard to give an answer, and it was hard to give my wife an answer in that video. I think I said hundreds of cord at least, which is absolutely true. You know, just thinking about it, if I averaged 8 cords a year over the last 30 years or so, which is probably pretty close, and I stack each one of those at least 3 times, we're talking 240 times 3, so you're talking close to 750 cords that I've stacked in the last 30 years, which I think is probably a pretty accurate number. It could be a little less, could be 600 cords, could be 700, but I'd say it's right around there. There's zero chance that it's under 500 cords. That's full cords I'm talking, 128 cubic feet. I don't use the term face cord. I know that's a pretty popular thing to use and a popular term for people, but I don't like the term. I think it's silly. And the reason for that is a face cord is what you see at the face of the cord. Traditionally, it's one 16-inch row, 4 feet by 8 feet. But not everyone processes their wood to 16 inches. Some people do 14 inches. Some do 18. Some do 20. Some do 24. I personally like my wood 20 inches because my wood stove takes big pieces of wood, and I don't like short 16-inch pieces. So my face cord would be more than a third of a cord, which is kind of the standard for a face cord. So I don't like the term. Just a little bit of a rant there. But so I'd say at least 500 full cords is what I've probably stacked in my life. Probably closer to 700. But it really got me to thinking, is it worth stacking your wood, period? I think about the time that I've spent stacking that 500 or 600 or 700 cords, and you're talking, days and days and days of work, probably weeks if you total up the whole amount of time. But, let's say you're fast and you can stack maybe a cord in half an hour, which I think would be going at a pretty good clip. So 4 hours per year to do 8 cords. So I'm stacking each one 3 times. Like I said, that's 12 hours a year times 30 years. Simple math. You start realizing 360 hours is weeks of work. Work week being, let's say, 40 hours. You're talking 9 work weeks for your lifetime. Just stacking wood. Think about stacking wood for 40 hours a week for 9 weeks straight. That's a lot of time that you're devoting to one thing. So that begs the question, is it worth stacking the wood? To me, I think it is for a number of reasons. A, it makes it look neater. It's easier to calculate how much you have. And I think it dries better, honestly. I think if you throw your wood in loose piles, it tends to be more likely to absorb ground moisture, tends to harbor rodents more easily. I don't think it dries as easily, especially if you have a real big pile and the center stays wet and doesn't get sunlight or wind to hit it. I think having your wood stacked in thin rows of maybe, 1 row or 2 rows is probably the ideal situation. If you have open stacks and you do 1 row and then do a space, another row, space, another row, etc., and you top cover the wood only, meaning you only cover the top of the wood. You don't cover the sides, which is still going to allow the wind to blow through it without the rain and the snow getting into the top of the pile. I think that's probably the ideal situation, but I don't know ultimately if it makes that much of a difference that you can justify the extra weeks and weeks you're going to spend over the course of your life. But I guess you could ask yourself, what else would you be doing with that 9 weeks of time? Would you honestly be going out and doing, activities with your family? Would you be doing productive things? Or is there a good chance maybe you'd just be watching TV or doing something like that? Maybe, having a beer, or things that really, at the end of the day, aren't any better than stacking wood. I think it's a good way to keep in shape. It's good exercise. I think it gives you a lot of time to think and reflect on life and think about things. I know when I stack wood, especially if I'm alone and I'm stacking wood, it really gives me time to reflect and think about life and, try to be a better person, a better man, a better father, a better husband, etc., etc. So I think there's certainly a lot of worse things you could be doing with your time than stacking firewood, but some people would argue, I'm sure, that there's better things you could be doing with your time. Maybe more productive things or more worthwhile things, doing things with your family, your kids, etc. I guess it's all up to personal perspective and your personal opinion on the matter. But I don't mind stacking wood, like I said earlier. I think it looks nicer visually. It's easier to tell how much wood you have and how much you've used. It's less likely to harbor rodents. It's going to season quicker. There's a lot of benefits to stacking your wood. It does take time, but anything you do is going to take time away from your schedule and from your life. And ultimately, you have to decide what's the most important thing to spend your time on and what's the most worthwhile thing to spend your time on. I do think from a time perspective, obviously, it's much faster to just throw your wood in a loose pile. And I would imagine most people selling wood that are commercial sellers aren't going to waste their time stacking the wood. It wouldn't make sense for them. They're just going to sell it quickly anyways. So I'm sure most of them are just putting it in loose piles. But then again, a lot of them are just loading it right into a truck from the splitter and selling it to you. And some of them are advertising it as seasoned wood, even though it's only been split open for 10 minutes. So you really got to be careful with that. But that's kind of not the point of the video. The point is it worth stacking your wood? I don't know. I really don't know if it is or not. To me, it is, but to a lot of people, I'm sure it's not. So I'd be interested to hear some of the viewers' comments and thoughts on the matter. Do you think it's worth stacking your firewood, or do you think it's not worth it? Please let me know in the comments why or why not you think that. Maybe we'll get some discussion going. And I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. This is a collection of clips from the last 2 or 3 years now of me splitting and stacking firewood. And all of my wood comes from trees, usually on my property. 100% of my firewood is coming from trees that I took down, mostly, standing trees that were alive at the time. So a lot of work, just like stacking wood is a lot of work. But at the end of the day, it's worth it to me to stack it. And let me know if it's worth it to you. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and we'll see you next time.